to another episode of the FootyNotes podcast with me, your host, Bonisile Ntlemeza. Excuse me. It's been 6 days since my last recording, and in that time, my football team, Football Club, has played two games. It's a bit tricky with the cup games, because cup games tend to be one-off events, and the league by nature is a bit more narrative driven, um, because you can connect momentum across games. But with cup games, each game is its own thing. And as we've seen this last week, Arsenal traveled to Portsmouth with a team that had 10 changes from the previous game against Liverpool. Good game, but it also obviously showed signs of the team having not played together much. There were 10 changes. Only Gabriel stayed in the team from the Liverpool game. So yeah, I mean it was a good game for giving people minutes who desperately needed minutes. Hello there. Thanks for joining. Please like, hype, subscribe, and chat if you have ideas or thoughts that you want to share. But but yeah, like so Arsenal basically, you know, had a front three of Madueke, Gabriel Jesus, and Gabriel Martinelli, and the midfield was Ethan, Eze, and Marino. I liked a lot of what I saw from those front six players. Marino playing the number six, he looked the best I've seen him. I know the quality of a position needs to be considered, but he looked the best I'd seen him in an Arsenal shirt playing in midfield in that sixth position. He probably won't play there too much when he plays with the top boys, but he did a great job and he looked so clean on the ball, good authority, set us up for success with some good passing, um, good carrying, good dribbling when needed, or pirouettes and things like that, where he, played himself out of jail a few times and then played a ball that gave Arsenal momentum going in the front, going on the front foot. And Ethan looked really good, probably the best I've seen him in midfield. Again, you want to caveat by saying this is a championship side they played against, but to be honest, you still need to, after not playing for over a month in Ethan's case, you still need to come in and maybe not over a month, but it's been weeks rolling. I don't think Ethan played against Palace actually. So yeah, it might be a month. So, you still need to kind of like be working really hard in training to show up in a game like this against Portsmouth to really do what Ethan Nwaneri did in that game. I thought I would see him in the Chelsea game, but I'm going to stick with Portsmouth and then go into the Chelsea game in a little bit. But yeah, like Ethan actually did more in my view than Eberechi Eze, who's more the senior player of the three in midfield. Like, after Marino, it would be Eze who's the senior player. Um, but the midfield worked. So I'm not gonna, go too heavy on what went bad for certain players in this game. But what I liked against Portsmouth was to see basically the availability now, getting better and better for Arsenal in the front positions, even though in the back positions you still have a couple of players out, of course, and that's a bit of a problem. Not gonna lie, that's a bit of a problem for them, and they can get towards the end of January where they can start getting players back, and maybe from doing a little bit more rotation between now and the end of January, because you will see that there are a couple of games where the rotation is going to be possible, especially in the Champions League. I think, the game against Kairat will be a good opportunity for Arsenal to rotate, and the game against Inter might be a good opportunity for Arsenal to rotate as well. So if you think about it from that point of view, like getting these players back and playing a Portsmouth team away from home where you can make 10 changes and still win 4-1 handsomely. Of course, it could have been better, just like the Chelsea result could have been better. I'll get to that next. But like I said, each game in the cup competitions is its own story. And so I'm going to try and be very cautious in making the game itself be like a thread, because cup competitions are just weird. And we saw Manchester United, get knocked out. We saw Crystal Palace, defending champions, get knocked out of the FA Cup by a team that's in non-league. So you can't. I know the inclination for those of us who are used to watching top level football. If you support an Arsenal or a Manchester United, or I know Manchester United haven't been top level like in recent years, but like if you're used to supporting those so-called big six teams, I think sometimes you can run into the the trap of the minutia of the way we watch football these days, right? Like we watch football with such microanalysis of every single incident and every single whistle blow and every single game is just forensically broken down, and that can destroy the joy. And so the beautiful thing about watching cup games is that you can just watch them without the pressure of a title race and what does this mean. As long as you win the game, you live to see another day. Like performing and winning 10-0 in this round of the FA Cup doesn't mean you're going to do the same thing in the next game. It's all going to be opponent driven and opponent dependent. And so Arsenal managed to get good minutes into Ben White, good minutes into Madueke, good minutes into Eze. Miles Lewis Skelly got 19 minutes at Portsmouth, and Martinelli got himself a hat trick. So like you find a way there, and then you sit Trossard, Saliba, Saka, Gyökeres, who I thought it was needed for him to not play a game um, at Portsmouth. Like I just think with the return of Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus is going to actually bring the best out of Gyökeres. I think the fact that his game is so dependent on strength and being able to bully and outmuscle the opponent and like beat you to submission. I think when he's playing 3 days every week against really strong defenders, I don't think he has the advantages he used to have it in Portugal. And it kind of showed actually in the Chelsea game. Like he played a bit better. The ball still bounces off of him. And it's never been a question of effort from him. I think it's a matter of his quality. However, when he's able to rest and maybe run at games for like the last 13 minutes, as he showed yesterday against Chelsea, he is a weapon to help supplement this team. I don't think he's the weapon to help carry the team to the promised land. But can he be a supplement piece? Like, hell yeah, he can. I really like the fact that now these guys are back and you can create a cocktail of forwards to get what you need out of them if you're Mikel Arteta. But the Portsmouth game was really good in that it allowed Arsenal to really get minutes into players who really needed them. And Madueke had an up and down game. I seen Stamford Bridge like Ethan, but it wasn't to be for him. But he had a really good game against Chelsea. Sorry, against Portsmouth. He was threatening. He is an enigmatic player. And I was saying in my previous podcast that Arteta needs to find a way of getting him and Saka in the team. I would like to see that version of Arsenal. I think it would be a very interesting iteration of Arsenal, like almost like what Chelsea did in the second half, where they took off Mark Jewell, who was more of a target centre forward, and played with little guys who were runners all across the front three positions. So I'm still curious to see that. At the moment, it seems like it's a like for like thing. Saka is out, Madueke is in. But I would be really keen to see Arteta go for a lineup that involves both of them, where neither of them is on the left, where maybe it's Trossard or Martinelli or Jesus on the left. That would be a very interesting thing, and that's what's beautiful about these cup games is that you can experiment, you can get Kepa happy, and Kepa played both games. So, it's been a good week for him. He feels involved, and I know there was a big conversation about Kepa maybe not playing at Chelsea, and he was maybe slightly to blame if you want to, put blame on anyone for that second goal. He was not authoritative enough in that second goal against Chelsea. But he's had a nice week, where I don't think he's had, since he's been at Arsenal, a week where he's played 2 games in 3 or so days. And so this is a beautiful thing about this cup week. David Raya didn't play since the Liverpool game. He'll probably be back, most likely be back away at Nottingham Forest. So you were able to do that. You were able to give David Raya, if nothing else, a mental break from having to be in the game, focused, trying to make big decisions. Because I don't know, last season, David Raya, even though he's been, he was one of the Golden Glove winners last season, and he's been awesome for Arsenal. It did start to show in the tail end of the season sometimes. Some of his passing was a little bit off because he had to play every game. Because last season, as a reserve goalkeeper, we had Neto, who was also cup tied. So, bad decision, by Edu and the administration team at Arsenal. But this year you have Kepa, and if you get a Kepa for £5 million, he's 31 years old, he's been kept by Spain, played for Madrid, played all the game for Bournemouth last year. Like, you want to make sure that this guy is getting, good minutes somewhere. And he's probably not going to play. If we don't win the cups, Kepa's not going to play in the Champions League, and Kepa's not going to play in the Premier League unless there's an injury to David Raya. So, just shout out to him for this, in this cup week, that he's had 2 outings, and now he's going to go back into his game until February 3rd. Knock on wood, nothing happens to David Raya, of course. But, just as a word for Kepa, like, he's needed that. And another player who's needed 90 minutes in a game, because Miles Lewis-Kelly has played quite a bit, actually, this season, played more than Ethan, but a lot of the time it's been from the bench. An injury to Nkapie, an injury to Calafiori. We need to defend the lead. He comes on in all those circumstances. But at Portsmouth, he played from the beginning, and he stayed on the pitch. So, that was good for him. I know there's been some clamor from a lot of Arsenal fans to see him kind of like continue on a straight line in terms of his trajectory, but it's hard to sustain what this kid did last year. And to think that it's only been a season and a half, and he didn't play for most of the first half of last season, but Miles has already played over 50 games for Arsenal at 19 years old. So I think people, I know we're in the microwave era of, football player development and results driven at the same time. So people want to play 19-year-old kids every 3 days, but at the same time, they also demand results and to win big trophies. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, but at the same time, the other thing that's true as well is that player development is not linear. Sometimes you can have a very steep rise and then you plateau, or maybe even regress a little bit, because other teams get to adjust and get to learn about the way you play. And in the case of Miles, I think he may be dealing with a little bit of that. In addition to having Calafiori play some of the best football we've seen him play at Arsenal, and then, of course, Pierre Nkapie, who's a more senior player, more defensively solid than Miles, because he's a defender, and Miles is a midfielder by trade until we turned him into a left back. So I think, Miles will be fine in his play at 19 to have played over 50 plus games for Arsenal. That's more games than what Jack Wilshere, who is one of the best Hale end products has ever produced for Arsenal. So, I think people need to be patient with Miles. He will be fine. I think, of course, he will be feeling a bit down with some of the, because he's a footballer. He wants to play all the games. I don't think he's going to be sitting there thinking, oh my God, I should be thankful that Teta is playing me, every time there's an injury. I don't think he's going to look at it that way. However, I think he's got um, a good team of people around him who will hopefully help him keep his feet on the ground, because there's a lot of football to be played, and more minutes will be coming for him for sure in this month of January. Forward, he'll find time for him, Arteta. And then Ben White this week has been for me the other big kind of story for this week, because we thought we had lost him when he played 3 games in 1 week after not playing for nearly the whole season. But he came back sooner than most of us feared he would. And thank goodness for that, because with this injury to Incapie, Calafiori, and Mosquera, it means Arsenal needed some luck at the back with the return of Ben White, and it did happen. And he's played 2 games this week. He didn't play 90 at the weekend. He played 90 at Chelsea. Uh, so Ben White is another guy who I think Arsenal is very, very fortunate to have him back, because the injuries at the back are just it's hard to explain. It seems like Arsenal gets injuries in clusters. Initially, it was at the front part of the pitch where Gyökeres ended up having to play every 3 days. And Gyökeres did, and Eze did. And so, like, by the time we get to December, both Eze and Gyökeres have played the bulk of the minutes, in those front positions. Because Odegaard was not available, Saka had a spell on the sideline. Um, Jesus and Kai Havertz were out for most of that first half of the season, right? So now that's happening at the back. That's happening at the back, and hopefully Arsenal will find a way to keep just enough players fit, because you can't go through a season, it seems these days, without injuries. I think injuries now are here to stay, because the players are just playing every 3 days, and everybody is pushing each other to the ground in terms of the intensity of the game. Opponents are working harder than ever before, so you have to work hard to get your advantage. Talent just by itself, it doesn't do enough anymore. And so, because of the demands physically that you have to go through, and the number of repeated splits that football players have to do these days in each game, I think I think injuries are just here and part of it. It's become more attritional as much as it has been about skill and good coaching and all of that. It's about also endurance and ability to survive a season with the best tools available to you. So I think Ben White being back, and we'll talk about him a little bit when we get to Chelsea, because he had a really good game in both games. But I think the Chelsea game will probably tell us more than the Portsmouth game. Um, and then Madueke, good good forward, intense play, and defensively he's working harder and harder every time we see him. And offensively, he'll give you peaks and troughs. He'll peak and he'll valley. There'll be peaks and valleys every time in the same performance. But I think he's starting to give a little bit more of a complete performance in terms of, like, he's becoming a little bit more two-way. He's still not Saka Martinelli level two-way. And I think, that's gonna come. And maybe we don't need him to be Saka Martinelli. Maybe we need him to be more offensive thrust and a more offensive threat kind of player, because we already have enough two-way dudes in this team. Um, no, God knows we have, I mean, even Trossard now is a two-way player, and when he arrived, people would be untrusting of him defensively. So the Portsmouth game, like, it was a good a workout session, but we saw a little bit more from people. And Martinelli scoring 3 goals from two from headers, and then another one from a Jesus cross. Um, I think Martinelli and Jesus are definitely a relationship we may want to lean into from time to time between now and the end of the season, because I don't know if Jesus will be at Arsenal next year. But when Martinelli plays and Jesus plays, we've seen the best of Martinelli. in those situations. And it's good to have Jesus back, but I don't think, either him or Gyökeres are going to be the answer every single game. And so I think it's good to have all three of those center forwards back now. Kai Havertz played in midfield at Chelsea, and Jesus went up to the center forward position. So, like, I think having these players back is going to help Arsenal to have options to see, oh, today we want to attack this game this way, and tomorrow we're going to attack the next game a different way. And it's going to make sure that the opponents are also guessing who we're going to play. They're going to have to come up with three defensive game plans to attack us. So I think that will help whoever is picked on the day to have at least 15, 20 minutes where the opponent is still trying to adjust their game plan. And sometimes you can play with two, which is something we haven't done a lot of. So I think Martinelli getting a hat trick, he was considering himself maybe a little bit unlucky to not have started at Chelsea, but I think it was a good thing, and maybe you know he'll get another game pretty soon, I'm sure, because Martinelli is trusted by Arteta. But Saka, Gyökeres, and Trossard seems to be right now the front three that plays in meaningful games as other people are building up um, their fitness. And I spoke last time about Gyökeres. I'm going to get into the Chelsea game now. He started the Chelsea game, and I'm happy for him that he had a goal and an assist in this game. I still think his hold-up play needs to improve, but like I said in the previous segment, talking about the Portsmouth game and what the week has done for Arsenal, I think Victor Gyökeres is definitely going to benefit from the other guys being fit, because I don't think he's ever going to be shunned out of the side. However, I think, it would be lovely to see Victor Gyökeres coming on, playing the 60 minutes from the beginning to really fight hard and wear defenders out, and then someone else can come and finish the food, or the reverse, where Havertz or Jesus is playing from the beginning sometimes, and Gyökeres is coming in running against tiring defenses. And I think this is beautifully set up now for him to really um, do a bit better in terms of, like, maybe his minutes will reduce, but I think his goal involvement is going to increase because he doesn't have to play every 3 days anymore. And when your game is based on strength and it's predicated on you being faster and stronger, like, I think playing every 3 days then takes away that superpower, because he's clearly not the most clever footballer. Like, he's clearly not the most technical footballer. And this is not a shot at him. This is me saying, like, we need to just basically understand what we have in him and use him accordingly. And I know Arteta is smart enough to do that, but he was not able to do that in the first half of the season because Havertz was not available, and we had to share time with Marino and Gyökeres up front. So I think hopefully, and this is me being super optimistic, I think he's going to have a better second half of the season, Gyökeres, because of the availability of the others, and it showed at Chelsea, like that from midway in the second half until he came off, he had a really good game, and this is not even just the fact that he scores, put a tap in and sets up Zubimendi for that third goal. I think I saw him really being energetic and being able to overpower Fofana a few times, and yeah, like, I just think Gyökeres playing with Saka and Trossard, the repetitions are there, and so and Saka had another quietly good game here. People are going to talk about goals and assists, and he didn't have one. It's another game where he played well, where he didn't have a goal or an assist. I think of the front three, Leo had moments. He twisted and turned a couple of moments, and he got close to maybe even fashioning a goal scoring opportunity. And I think Leo is in really good form right now. I have no issues with him continuing to start ahead of everybody else on the left. But I think um, as a not playing again in a cup game against a Premier League opponent, that's the one thing that maybe I thought I would have seen. I know he didn't do a lot at Portsmouth, But it would have been nice to see more Eze in this game and maybe Martinelli, a little bit more, like maybe changing the team a little bit sooner. Not because anyone was doing anything bad, but I think, you score a hat trick, you expect to be in the game the next time, And I think Martinelli earned more minutes than what he got in the Chelsea game for sure. And I think, like, unless you're going to start Martinelli in Nottingham Forest, which I don't think that's going to be the case, it would have been nice to see Martinelli more in this game. Arsenal played a really good game against a Chelsea team that was without um, Reece James, Moises Caicedo, and Cole Palmer. But I think they're gonna probably regret conceding 2 goals, and maybe could regret even more not scoring 4 or 5 because they were there. Chelsea were there for the taking in this game, and they will be better in the next time because they will have had this coach for another couple more weeks, and most likely they will have some of their better players back too. But on the day, we can also argue, I guess, that Robert Sanchez, or Robin, anyway, Sanchez, the goalkeeper for Chelsea, was very generous in giving Arsenal a couple of goals. So I guess you can, if you were trying to be fair, that, Chelsea contributed with 2 goals, and so it was only maybe the matter of time before Sanchez was going to be good enough to do a big save like he did against Mikel Marino when he was still 3-1. If that goes in and he saves it with his foot, it's a really, really good piece of goalkeeping. I think that the game is a different game. I think the tie is pretty much done at 4-1. Chelsea might have come in and scored maybe a second goal, but it's still 4-2. But this feels to me like a 4-1 game that ended 3-2. Um, and I guess, cup games are weird like this. It's like I was saying in the beginning of this pod, that each cup game is its own individual story. So now you have to go back in 2 weeks to the Emirates and do it again, basically. Draw the game, win the game by 1 goal, whatever, it doesn't matter. Because if you get through to the final, it's a whole different thing again. It's its own thing. And that's the beauty of cup competitions as well. Like, because Chelsea played a very emotional game, like like they can against us, I've seen. And I think that's just where they are at the moment as a team. They're just young, and they don't have a quit bone. They have some really talented kids. I think they lean into their emotion a bit too much, you know, and I think Arsenal definitely looked the more mature, more complete, more ready to win now team. They just, they got lucky, that Arsenal didn't put away some of the really good chances that they did create. Chelsea had most of the ball in this game, but, like, in terms of numbers, Arsenal were, outside of possession, all the numbers that mattered were in Arsenal's big chances created, big chances missed, XG of, like, just under 3. So we slightly overperformed our XG. Their XG was zero point 0.6 something. So they don't even have 1 XG of 1, they scored 2. So, like, there are some things in this game that obviously, like, you can live with regret if you're an Arsenal fan like myself. However, I think Arsenal, will like their chances at home. If you had said to them, "Guys, we're gonna go to Stamford Bridge, and we're gonna win 1-0, and then we're gonna come back home with a 1 goal advantage," I think all the boys would have taken it, And I think, the fact that, again, Arsenal were able to win away against a respectable opponent, I think that that should build a little bit more confidence. The confidence, like Arsene Wenger used to say, is built by going up the stairs, and it's destroyed going down the elevator. So I think winning begets winning, and I think the fact that Arsenal did that in this game and lived to see another day at home, in the second leg, where there'll be a lot of other football in between for both teams. I would have to say you have to like your chances if you're Arsenal going home with a one-goal lead. Yes, it would have been helpful and, maybe more, advantageous for sure if you had gone home with a two-goal advantage. But a one-goal advantage means that the tie is still on. Chelsea are gonna fancy themselves, but they're gonna have to come out and play. They can't do a sit back and try to, do what most teams do when they come to the Emirates. They're gonna have to come and play because the initiative now is on them, even though, yes, we're home. So I like our chances for sure. And what was good about this game, though, like the back four of Timber at left back, yes, that's not his preferred position, but he's the best available left back at the moment. And Ben White then steps in, and I think that was a really good choice by Arteta. I know people were wanting Miles to play, but Miles also has more minutes in him than Ben White. But at the same time, in a semi-final against a really tricky kid in Esteval, I think it was the right decision. This kid gave Timber a match. I know Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and I think Jamie Redknapp on TV were talking about that, this kid gave Timber the business. I don't think it was that good of a game, but I do think, the kid asked some good questions, but he didn't do really anything that led to anything. You know what I mean? He was a threat, but I think Timber having, played most of the last year and a bit at right back, he's probably was still maybe having to readjust a little bit to being on the left. And he did well. Like I don't think he was struggling against this kid. I think yes, the forward player had moments, and because you're gonna have moments in a game, you can't win every single duel. But what I liked about Timber playing at left back was that we got to see more Ben White, and this was a good Ben White game, and he was able to go through the whole 90. Um, Even his passing, aside from the moments where he impacted scoring, where he scored himself and then set up the goal, involved in the setup for the goal for Gyökeres. But his passing was really good. Like I really liked his passing through the lines. Ben White is a really good offensive weapon in this team for sure. And Victorian Timber is still a good right back, but like if you wanna this right here actually is an example of what I was saying about what we need to do in the front. Play your best players. Find a way to keep your best players in the team. Like, this is a good example of that. Like, for example, right now, Madueke for me is in the best 3 Arsenal attacking players on form, right? Saka Saka, we don't even talk form about Saka. Saka is just good all the time. I think we should find some games where we just do that. It's like, you know what? We're gonna play our best guys on form, right? I don't think Madueke is a better player than Jesus or a better player than Havertz and some of the other players in the team. But on form right now, he is one of the most informed forwards in terms of offensive threat, giving us thrust and like threat going the other way to like really push teams back and hurt them. So I think it would be really, really prudent for Arsenal to find ways. And I've said maybe Saka in the 10 or as a 9 that kind of is withdrawn, and then you decide who you go with on the left. But because I don't like the idea of Noni on the left. Noni on the left is he seems a bit more timid, at least in an Arsenal shirt. There were some people who are Chelsea fans who saw him in the left last year towards the end of the season, who saw some good performances. I don't know how. it was that Maresca was able to get that from him. But for one reason or another, Arteta has not been able to find that money on the left-hand side. We see him do his best work on the right. So if there's anything that I liked in this, that it showed me that Arteta is willing to go with the best guys. Not just like, okay, well, we're gonna do like for no, 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 no. Because he could have gone for Mars, who's played in the Champions League semi-final. This is a Carabao Cup semi-final. But no, he didn't do that. He was like, you know what? Timber and White are better defenders. I'm gonna go with them, and I think we should do that up front. Anyway, Saliba deserves a mention for this game. William Saliba, his defensive play, never in question, never in doubt. Sometimes on the ball, he gets bored and he makes decisions that are boneheaded. But my goodness, his passing and his ability to kind of like run into space with the ball to change the picture and then find a good pass for an opponent for a teammate to run into, um, his ability to give us an advantage in midfield is something that I hadn't seen as much before. He usually stays in the back line and kind of passes from the back. And yes, he had a couple of like long balls, some of which didn't work out. Crossfield long balls, one of which went between two teammates. But his short passing has always been on point, but a bit on the safe side, except for when he gets bored and just like decides, okay, I'm just going to do something like random here. But in this game, and the last few games I've seen him when he steps into midfield, this kid, I don't think there's enough English words that I can use to really fully paint the picture of how happy I am to have him at Arsenal playing in a partnership with Gabriel Martinelli, because them two, man, yes, we're conceding goals with them, but we don't ever feel insecure. We don't feel, the jitters that we felt for so long, for a good decade and a half there between, 2007 to 2020, 21. You know, they are, for me, before they've even won anything, these two are historic kind of talents as a collective. You take them apart, they'll probably be good and they'll play for other teams, and maybe they don't look as good as they do with each other. But with each other, man, like it's a joke. It's a joke how good these kids are. And in midfield, Declan Rice had an okay game, and Martin Odegaard had an okay game. The guy for me in this game was Martin Zubimendi. He is very deserving of every superlative you can find, because to come from Spain, having been a one club guy, and do what he's doing in his new surroundings this quickly, this consistently, Zubimendi deserves. If Arsenal wins the Premier League, I know people are going to say Declan Rice, but I think Zubimendi will be a worthy shout for football of the season. If not just at Arsenal, maybe Premier League. Like what he's doing, I'm not saying he's deserving of it and like front running, but I think he should be in the conversation for definitely. I know there's no award for signing of the season, but for me, he's in the conversation for that. And the way he's doing things, showing new faces to his game, especially on the offensive third, because he's well known for, his build-up phase play and his, middle of the park play for sure, controlling the tempo, being a metronome. But at the moment, he's an all-action midfielder for Arsenal. And Ateta used the word unlock when speaking of him yesterday. They definitely have unlocked something. I don't think people in Spain who don't watch his club knew that this guy was in this play, the guy we're seeing at Arsenal. And I guess this is what can happen when you find yourself playing with other really good players. because unfortunately for some people, you play for your home club and you want to be loyal, but it also means you're easy to knock out of games because teams can just key you in as a key player. They game plan for you, and when you're playing with a team that has so many other really good players, it's hard to key in on one. Like, and I think that's one of the things. For example, I think Gyökeres and Saka will benefit from as the team becomes better. You can't key in. Teams can't cheat on the right side of Arsenal anymore because we have capable players around the pitch who can hurt you. And this is what happens when you try to, for example, cheat on Odegaard or Rice. So Mendy pops up and just destroys teams with his passing, with his goal threat. He's very happy to take a shot, and the goal he scores, like, good build up, um, leading up to the goal. Ball is pushed into by Marino into Gyökeres, who just, with the outside of his foot, just places it in the path of a running Zubimendi. Zubimendi fakes with his left foot, fakes again, sits down. The defender, I think it's Fofana, sits him down, and boom, very, very powerful left-footed shot into the net, 3-1 Arsenal. So, like, this game was, I think, definitely a goal was the goal. Like, but it was a game that where he really did well. He fought for ball all over the place in midfield. I remember one incident where he chases what looks like a lost cause because he doesn't have the pace, and Fofana is about to beat him to the ball. He slides into ball, try and cross it. It hits Fofana. It goes out for a corner on the left attacking corner of Arsenal. So he's all over the place, and he's a central midfielder, but he doesn't really just stay there. Jorginho, Thomas Partey style. Him and Rice play. I mean, and Odegaard, actually, they are a trio of really good athletes. Rice being the best athlete of them all, and Zubimendi probably the third best, because I think Odegaard has definitely got more engine and more running power than Zubimendi. But Zubi is no slouch though. Like, he can get about, and he's giving us a very, very different look. And long may his health fortunes continue, because that's one of the things that I think Arsenal won't be able to replace. If Zubimendi or Rice goes down for a stretch, then you become a human team again. But with them three, Odegaard, Zubimendi, and Rice playing together, we can bully teams. We can. And we can play, like, for example, at Chelsea yesterday. I don't think we played beyond third gear, second and third gear, and we were able to get 3 goals. Yes, we conceded 2 because we were not playing at our highest intensity. And yes, you get punished in football sometimes. So I think this game against Chelsea shows that Mikel Arteta really wants this trophy, because he didn't have to, go back to the big boys, but he went back to the big boys for this one. None, almost none of the guys who started, right? I think Gabriel and Kepa and Ben White were the only players who survived the Portsmouth starting lineup. Like, yeah, everybody else came back on, right? So it seems like Arsenal are really, really going to try and go for this trophy. A lot of us Arsenal fans, I don't know if this changes anything if we win this trophy or not. I think you'll celebrate in March and be happy, but I think, to be fair, most of us will be disappointed if the Carabao Cup is the only trophy Arsenal wins this season. So as much as I'm happy that we go to the second leg with a lead, I do think it might be prudent to try and use the squad's depth as much as you can in this second leg as well, because, like, you want to be winning these Premier League games. You want to be winning these Premier League games. Like, you can't be having another situation where you're running the same back 5 players, back 7 players every 3 days, which is what we did in December, right? Like, and then you get the result like Liverpool, or the game like Liverpool, where you don't have it in the second half of the game. I think if you're going to be playing every 3 days, we need to find minutes for some of these guys. That's why I was surprised that we went as strong as we did in this first leg at Stamford Bridge. But maybe it's because it's an away game. But when we go back to home comforts, I'm hoping that Arsenal will be more than happy to to um, to play a little bit more squad depth game, because I think we have good players and they deserve minutes. We have good players who really deserve minutes. So, with that said, I think I'm going to look a little bit ahead to the Nottingham Forest game, because, like I said, each cup game is its own thing, and so like it's hard to read too much into it. I know we live in an era where everybody likes to micro analyze everything, and I can sometimes be guilty of that too. But I think for the Nottingham Forest game, you kind of have to run these guys again out. The guys who started against Chelsea, unless Calafiori is back, which I don't think is going to be happening. And this is why I was hoping to see more, especially in the front six positions, more Martinelli minutes, more Eze minutes, and more. I mean, Jesus and Gyökeres will be fine because there's also Kai Havertz to play there, and maybe more Merino minutes, right? Because they've all played well against Portsmouth. But now you're going away to Nottingham Forest, and I think Gyökeres is definitely the striker for me for the away games. At least from the start. Because he can get about. He doesn't mind a physical confrontation. It's within the rules of the game, of course, but he doesn't mind a physical confrontation. And I don't know if you go with Trossard or Martinelli. I would go with Trossard because I anticipate Nottingham Forest to try playing a game where they stay in it as long as they can, meaning that they're gonna be compact and they're gonna try to make life hard. And that game suits a player like Trossard or Eze a bit more than it does suit a Martinelli, who needs a little bit more real estate, a little bit more room to run into. A low block doesn't always work well with that, especially if you have Gyökeres in the middle, who can maybe try to be a more battering ram in the middle and give you, the kind of physical advantage that you may want against your Murillos and whoever plays next to him at centre back. And I think we're going to have to play with some craftsmen in this game. I don't know if you want to go all the way craftsmen, like maybe play Marino so that you can have kind of a shadow centre forward rather than a traditional one. But I'm happy with Gyökeres having another start away at Nottingham Forest. And the rest of the team keep the same. Rice, Zubimendi, Odegaard in midfield, Timber left back, unless Ben White is flagging. Like Timber left back, Saliba Gabriel centre back, and Ben White at right back. And then so the big decision would be left wing and centre forward, which that's probably going to be the decision on most weeks, really. And left back when Calafiori and Gabriel are not fit, of course. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below who you would like to start. I think, yeah, just run it back with the Chelsea lineup, in my opinion. But I wouldn't begrudge, Jesus or Martinelli. But if Jesus starts at centre forward, I would then say start Martinelli at left wing, because Jesus does drift to the left and Martinelli comes into centre forward a little bit. That rotation would be useful against a low block. But if it's Gyökeres starting in the centre forward, then don't play Martinelli from the start. That would be my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know. Thank you for joining me for this live recording of the FootyNotes podcast. I will be talking to you guys after the weekend fixtures. Cheerio.